Hi everyone, my name is Tiago Rodrigues, I'm an OutSystems architect, and this is my fourth series of videos talking about OutSystems and GenAI. For today's video, we are going to talk about our third pattern, multi-agent system pattern, this will be a more short video, but it's a very interesting use case for us to have for our clients or for our projects. So let me just here show you guys. So for today we are going to talk about these 3 points. So first I'm going to introduce the router pattern or redirect pattern. So we are going to explore a bit about this one. Then we are going to make here a comparison of what makes a router pattern being a router and versus an orchestrator pattern. And finally, we are going to explore this pattern in a specific use case using in an OutSystems demo, in this case in an application called Document Redirect Manager. So yeah, this will be a much smaller video, but I'm going to bring another multi-agent system pattern for us to explore. Okay, before going into the router pattern, let's first check up the previous. So 2 videos ago I talked about the orchestration pattern. So in this pattern we have an orchestrator or a supervisor in the middle, and he is basically the one who manages the different needs according to the use case. Okay, so if he upon a certain reply or response, he analyzes it. If he has the need to call the agent A, he will call it, he will receive the results, he will then analyze it again and decide to call another until he gets the job done. So this is a module where the orchestrator leads what needs to be done. Then we talked in the previous video about a completely different pattern, the collaboration pattern, where we discussed the characteristics of how we could or when we should use this pattern, but we also talked of how different this is from the orchestrator. So in this case there is no manager, the team of agents work together, and you can have n number of agents, n iteration cycles, and even the way you manage the information between them can be different. So there are variations. You can make everyone with the same context, having the same context of all the agents, or you can have a context for each one of the agents. So in this pattern there is no leader. The group is the leader per se. They execute the tasks and then they retrieve the result. Finally, the new pattern, the router pattern. So in the router pattern, it's more close to the orchestrator, but at the same time very different in the use cases. The reason for that is because the way you build the workflow is quite similar. You may see that you have here a router that could be similar to the orchestrator, or it could seem that is similar, and then we have the other agents that are called. Okay, what is the router pattern? The router pattern is when you need to have an agent that can receive very different contextualized information or documents or any other kind, and his only job is to categorize the information that he receives and to redirect that to another system. A very good example for us to have this in our work is, for example, an office assistant. Normally when we have an officer assistant, that person can deal with a lot of topics regarding the office, the installations, and so on. But for example, if correspondence arrives, it is that person who knows to who redirect the letters. Or if a new visitor arrives, that person asks, okay, who are you? Good morning, I'm here to talk with Peter. I have an appointment now at 10. And that person simply redirects the visitor to Peter. So you can see here an interesting characteristic. That is the fact that the router, he does not need to know how to do the job regarding that information. He only needs to know who to redirect. Okay, it's basically like you having a list of contacts in your phone number, and you know that each one of that contact is a specialized person in somehow, and you simply need to call that person whenever a problem arises. So this is the router or the redirect. Another interesting characteristic here is that the router does not get to decide afterwards what happened. So because he simply redirects the information, it is basically a fire and forget method. So he decides, okay, this document or this information is to be redirected to this agent. He calls the agent, sends the information, and that's it. The job is done. He does not get the reply or the response, he simply calls. He can get, for example, just a confirmation of, okay, I've received your intention, thank you, I continue from now on, but he does not influence the process anymore. So this means that the process is linear. It doesn't go back to him again. After he redirects to someone, the process flows continuously to a second step. So this router pattern, it's very useful when you have, as I said, the need to classify information and to decide different handlers of that information. And you might ask, okay, so if this is basically a redirector, the router is simply a redirector, why can't I simply use an agent that has the different tools to call each scenario and make him perform it? Okay, because if we train an agent to handle all the scenarios of redirection of the information, then we don't need to have a multi-agent system. And in this case, I think that the best way for us to reply to this is using again the real case scenarios. Why doesn't an office assistant, instead of redirecting the visitor to Peter, or instead of redirecting the correspondent to the correct people, why doesn't that person simply performs what it needs to be performed? Imagine you would have a visitor, he would come to the office and he would say, good morning, I'm here to see Peter, I have a meeting at 10, and the person, the office assistant would say, oh, okay, thank you very much, I will do the meeting, in this case I can be Peter, so let me go and we will talk about whatever technical skills you want to talk about or whatever use case you want to talk about. It's very realistic to think about this. First, because it would require that person to know everything that happens on the office. And that person, she would have to handle in the same way, with the same efficiency of the people that is on that office. So she would have to be a very good architect, he would have to be a very good commercial, he would have to be very good HR, she would have to be very good at everything because she would be replacing them. So you can see how in some use cases it's not possible to have only one agent dealing with everything, because if we are talking about very different complex tasks after the redirection is done, most of the times we will not be able to achieve an efficient process by using just one agent, because he will not be trained to be very good performer in that situation. And that is why in some scenarios we need to go with a multi-agent system, and in this case use a router pattern. Okay, so let's now compare a bit what is this router pattern and how it differentiates from the orchestrator pattern. Because as we have discussed, there is here some quite similarities when we are talking in both of them. So if we see, we have in both of them, we have this centralized agent that receives initially the information, right? And then we have this way of him to redirect, so to send the information to different agents, right? So what is really the difference? Because technically they might seem similar, but in terms of use cases they are very different. First thing is that this router, he does not have a leadership role, or he is not a manager. He is simply someone that receives an information and he is trained to classify based on that information in a certain number of outcomes. So this person doesn't need to know the content of the information well enough to act upon it. He just needs to know enough to know to who redirect this. And in here, with the multi-agent system, with the orchestration pattern, if you guys notice, for the centralized agent to know to who to call and then to receive the information, he needs to understand how the flow of something works. In our example video, we created a ticket management system. So this manager, he had to know how to design a flow of a ticketing system. So he had to know that if the ticket had to be sent to experts, he would send to experts. If he had to update the ticket, he would have to update the ticket. But if everything was okay, everything was done, he was the one deciding to close the process. So this is the main difference between the two systems. This one, the manager decides what to do next and decides when to close the process. In the router pattern, the router simply redirects and then forgets. He is not responsible to take the decision upon what to do next. So this is basically the main difference. And attached to this, you can also notice that when an information goes to one of the other agents, after they process what they need to process, the result always returns to the manager. So he decides what to do next. So he's the one that decides the next step, and because of that, the outcome of those other agents always goes back to the manager. And in the router pattern, you may see that doesn't happen, because it is a fire and forget method. So the router redirects the information to the other agents, and then the other agents proceed doing what they need to do, and they don't go back to the router because the router doesn't have to decide anything. The process continue to flow in the same way that the office assistant would receive the visitor and would redirect to Peter to perform the meeting. That person, the office assistant, doesn't need to worry about the rest of the process, so performing the meeting and so on. So this is the two major differences between the orchestration pattern and the router pattern. Simplifying, in this situation, the router doesn't have any management decision, including to close the process. He simply redirects. And with the orchestration pattern, the information always flows back again to the manager for him to decide what to do next. So these are the two major differences. What does it mean in terms of use cases? It means that when you are evaluating this process and comparing with a use case from a client, you must try to imagine, or it helps if you imagine this as if it was with employees or if it was with people. So if you would build this with a team of people, that person in the middle, what would be her role? Would she be a sort of a manager? For example, if we want to perform a project management multi-agent system, we have the project manager role, and everything needs to go back to her for her to decide what to do next. Or is this person in the middle simply someone that redirects, that knows how to identify a process and redirect to the correct place and doesn't have to do anything more with that? So if you start imagining how you would build a team to do this process, it becomes more easy for you to understand if you would apply an orchestration pattern or if you would apply a router pattern. And now that we have talked about these different patterns, let's see how we can put into action the router pattern using OutSystems. So this is the document redirect manager. This is a very simple application where we can add documents, any type of PDF, doc, text, image documents. And as we can see here, this system is prepared to identify and process invoices, transport documents, proof of payments, subscription contracts, and product specifications. So how does this work? In this case, we have here a set of sample files. So for example, let me open here this one for you to see that this is an example of product specification with different type of information. So by adding this document here and ask to process, what is happening is under the hood we are triggering a multi-agent system with a router pattern. We will go into that after this, but he basically detected that, okay, this PDF is a document type product specification, and I sent this to the product management system because he had configured that if this is the case, send to this system. And in here we have like a summary of the information that he complied, that he's got from the document, and just for us to make a sort of a bridge between it. And if you want, you guys saw the PDF document that had a lot of tables, a lot of images, but if we want to see, this is how this is the result document just before the router decides where to send this. So basically what we do is we convert first to markdown language, that is like a text, for the LLM module to more easily understand the content and decide. Okay, so you can see here that we can do this with PDFs, or for example, let's try here with another one. So I have here, for example, a proof of payment. Let's see this proof of payment. So this is like a sales receipt, and we have here some handwriting, right? And this is the cool thing about using the in this case Microsoft, the Azure Document and Vision services, is that I can give an image to him and he will try first to get information from that image, and only afterwards he will try to classify the what type of document it was. It doesn't mean that this is bulletproof, because from time to time he can say that he did not understood, or he was not able to detect the type of document. In this case it was able, so you can see that he said that it was a proof of payment. Perfect. And he sent it to Dynamics FNO with here some details. And if we see the document content, you see that he converted that image to this text format, right? And we have here a table, but this is basically markdown language. It's a text for the model to understand. And now you can see that the module was able, by picking this, he was able to understand that the item purchase was a box that Jen used to keep her band-aids in. Quantity of 1, cost $3. So this is basically a document router. And what he does is he decides what to do or where to redirect this information. So let's see what is happening under the hood. So first of all, one of the things that I want to first show you guys is the use of the document vision from Azure Foundry. And you may ask, okay, why do we use this? Why don't you simply give an image to the model and he will reply with that image? Yes, ChatGPT already has some modules that can understand the context from an image, but from my experience, it's always better, before giving to an LLM module, it's always better to run a service specified in converting documents to text content that can be better used. In this case, the vision and document features of AI Foundry can do much more than this. You can query automatically things about those documents and receive the response. But in this case, I don't want to use this. I simply want to convert the content of a document to a text. And the second reason is that he does this very well with images. As you might saw, the receipt, it was handmade. So it was not an easy process to get information from it, but because under the hood he uses OCR processes to detect characters, he performs certain operations. He is very good fetching information from images. So what I start doing in this case is this. Okay, so let me show you what is happening under the hood. So what basically I'm doing is, whenever I click to process a document, we go to this first task of processing, and then depending on the type of document, we redirect to a specific system or agent. In this case, we are not doing anything after this besides retrieving an answer about that, just to make sure that this redirection worked well, but we are not doing afterwards anything. It was just for the demo purposes. But if we go inside of this process document, then we have these two steps. As I said, first we always get the context of the document to Markdown using Foundry Vision and Document, and only after that we pick the Markdown and we give it as an input for a module to classify. And this module, picking a bit the example of how to define agents using this visual helper. So what we have here is we have this router agent, and we say, okay, act as a document redirector manager, where you decide the type of document you receive and redirect to the respective agent. Then in the instructions, we give him the options of the type of the documents he will classify, and in the context we give the context, the markdown text that we retrieve from the documents. And basically he has one tool, that is the tool to decide what is the document type, so to classify the document type. So with this, let's check up the code. So you see that we have this first process document and route, that is exactly the first step that I show, where we first convert to the markdown and then we call the module. And in here you may see that I'm calling the module and I'm giving him the function. So I'm saying this is your function, classify document type. These are the 6 types of documents, and you may see that I put the 5 and then I put the other, that is for me to handle as an error. If he decided that a certain document was not any of these 5, he will give as another. Okay, and after that you may see that he doesn't do anything else. He only updates the document with the content and the type, and that's it. And the reason for this is because I'm not using an event-driven multi-agent system. I'm using again the workflow to do it. So let's check the workflows. So we have, as I said, we have the workflow of mass document entry management, and this is basically the router pattern as we saw in the PowerPoint. So we have here a start that starts with the triggering of the event, but as you can see here in OutSystems, this event doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any handler, and the reason for it is because the handler is being done here. So whenever someone triggers this, it passes the ID, and then it's the service action process document and route, the one we just saw, that fetches the document ID and performs what it needs to perform. And you might see that afterwards, one of the outputs of this service action is precisely the document type. So we are outputting the document type as an output of this document, process document and route action. So it means that with that we can create here a decision node where, depending on the value or of the type, we call the different actions. And we also had, as I said, the other option where basically he says that he calls this service action of no document type found. So basically this is the magic of a router pattern, is something so simpler as this. We have a router and the router decides who to call next. Inside of each one of these you will see that it's very simple. It's basically the same in all of them. What I do is, for example, the redirect invoice, I fetch the document contact, I call a document and I call the module and say, hey, you are a system that processes invoices, simply reply that you received the document and it was okay. Just for me to get this success message here in the document. So this is the agents that simulate that they performed the action and it was okay. So there was no error. So you see that all of them, they are exactly the same. It just changes the document. You may ask why I did the different ones if they are all the same. The only reason why I did it was to show that in a real case scenario, each one of the redirects, they can have very different logic inside of it, right? Because as we saw it, each document type has different routing systems, right? So the invoice, the transport document, and the proof of payment, they all go to Dynamics F&O. But for example, a subscription contract goes to Dynamics CRM, and the product specification, it goes to the product management system. So this means that most likely, if we wanted to do this in an effective way, we would have here 3 service sections for each system, that each one of them would then follow the logic of processing the information to those systems, because then the information might need to be transformed, might need to be made some calculations just before calling the APIs on the other systems. And so this was the only reason why I divided this in different service actions, just for you to see that we can then route to each service action regarding of what needs to be done. And then we also have the no document type found that simply updates with no document, so that we can see an error on the application. And that's it. This is as I said, a very simple application just to add documents and then to classify, but this has a very good potential to be used in a lot of use cases on clients, because almost all of us can relate this use case, and almost every client needs somehow to process different types of documents, and most of the times this is a very manual work. So we have someone that picks emails from a generic mailbox that receives all kinds of documents, invoices, complaints, all types of documents, and normally this needs to be a manual work. So it needs to have a person deciding, oh, this is an invoice, let me send this to financial. This is a complaint, let me send this to the product team. So this is normally manual. So with this type of pattern and with an application more or less similar to this, we can automatize this process of redirecting information. And we can put guardrails on top of it. So for example, we can configure a module if he is not really sure about the type. He can send a human activity for a human to classify this. So we can make this more robust to make it a more bulletproof system. But yeah, I think this is a very cool application. It has very cool use cases on top of that. So feel free to comment or to add some feedback about this. If you want me to explain a bit more some specific parts, let me know. If you also want to try out something like this, tell me. I can send the OML, or I can put it on the Forge. So let me know what you think. And with this, we basically finalized the video for today. This was the pattern, the router pattern. I hope you guys enjoy it, and next week we will talk about our last pattern of 5 ones. So we already discussed the orchestrated pattern, the collaboration pattern. Now it's the router pattern. Sorry, I said 5, but it's 4. And the next one, for next week, it will be the pub sub pattern, and this will close for now the list of patterns that we can use when building multi-agent systems. I hope you guys liked it. Feel free to comment and to send me ideas of next videos. And yeah, have a good week, and see you guys on the next video.